All right, we're doing another one of these, the Homeric Rhapsody thing. Let me see if I could turn this headphone on. I think I turned it off. The idea of what I'm doing here is not necessarily to recite the Iliad word for word like an actor on stage. It's not necessarily to create an entirely new work, but rather to uphold the ancient tradition of oral storytelling, which in the days before literacy was the only way to tell a story, which means you tell it a story that's been passed down to you. In my case, it's been passed down through books that I've read, the translations of the Iliad and such. But in ancient times, it would be passed down through, other people, and you would piece together the stories that you can remember, which comprise the larger story. You could piece together all the scenes and dialogue and stitch it together with whatever you can come up with. That's the way that is done. And in order to better write content for the game that I'm working on, which is based on the Iliad, I am attempting to kind of like get myself into the mindset of that ancient tradition, which is still upheld in some parts of the world, but mostly in Western culture is entirely gone. So it's kind of been an interesting ride. So let's keep going. For anybody who's not following along, we're in the middle of book 3. Paris and Menelaus just had their duel. Tell me, goddess, of that time when Paris had met with his wife Helen after the shamed moment of the fateful duel with Menelaus. Aphrodite, the lovely tressed, always laughing, had left her favorite, Paris, and had embodied one of the serving women who attended Helen, the mother of Theseus. She it was who came all the way to the parapet where Priam and Helen and all of the different old men of the city were presiding over the battle. None knew what had happened. None could understand where Paris had went, nor did they yet understand that Paris had gone. And yet, Aphrodite, in her guise, came up onto that upper rostrum and spoke into the ear of lovely Helen. "Oh, Helen, come quickly to your chambers. There is something you need to see." Helen, not understanding what this might be, had quickly sprung up and followed her serving woman, but as she was out of earshot, and none of the other men had heard what they said, allowing her to go back to her chambers, expecting some emergency, Helen, when alone with her serving woman, had spoken to her. "What is it that you would take me away from this all-important battle?" Thus the serving woman spoke. "You must understand, Paris has come back, we know not how, but he is now in his chambers that he shares with you yourself. He is so lovely, he seems to have just come back from a dance. You would never know that he had been just within a pitched battle with a strong foe. Perhaps he would be just getting ready to go to a dance, not even having the sweat of the dance floor upon him. Such a lovely specimen is he." Helen, watching her servant speak to her this way, had recognized the lovely breasts and ankles and backs of the legs of Aphrodite trailing before and behind her as she overtook her conversation partner, and she spoke to her. "Oh, dreadful goddess, you do not trick me. I understand to whom I am speaking. How could you do this to me? How can you keep torturing me like this? I want to go back to Sparta. I do not want the ire of all the Trojans and the Greeks alike. Do you know what they would do to me? If you love him so much, why don't you take him? You bring him back to Olympus, or go and serve at his feet in whatever hut he chooses to live in, and he will make you his wife, or perhaps his slave, who serves him and does whatever he chooses. I do not want this any longer. Aphrodite, laughter-loving, had quickly soured her smile and was no longer laughing. She spoke to Helen. "Do not anger me, you slut. I will do as I choose. I am among the lineage of the high Olympians, born of Kronos himself, and some have even said that I am of the blood of the seed of Uranus, higher than Zeus and all the others. You, a human, a peon, a nothing, will not tell me how to conduct my business, nor do you understand the consequences what you speak of. Now go to his bed before the love that I have shown you until now turns to hate. You have no idea how much worse it can be for you." Thus, Helen, quietened, quickly took her way to the bedchamber, and Aphrodite returned back to Olympus, laughter-loving once again. Not so bad. Actually, pretty interesting speech, and one of the better performance moments, I guess, of mine. As I was saying in one of the other ones of these, I'm concentrating so hard on trying to assemble the story that I haven't really been able to like imbue that much character into the different characters. But at least there was a couple pretty good, moments with Helen and with Aphrodite there, compared to what some of the other ones do. I haven't really been giving anybody any particular voices that much. Again, I'm just concentrating so much on trying to actually draw up the story from memory. But it's doing all right. I like the moment where I couldn't remember how Aphrodite gets Helen to leave the place where she is with Priam and everybody above the city. I couldn't remember if she, as the servant, whose name I also couldn't remember, is Anticlea or Euryclea, or it's not Euryclea because that's Odysseus's servant. It's the mother of Theseus, I'm pretty sure, even though Homer doesn't mention it in that part. But I think it was in Post-Homerica that it's mentioned that the person of the same name is the mother of Theseus, who then gets rescued by her grandsons or whatever. But I couldn't remember how she gets her out of there, so I had her whisper into her ear, and then on the way to the bedchamber, she tells her, the thing about Paris coming back. There was an interesting thing where in the story, she recognizes Aphrodite. There's different ways that people recognize gods, none of them really understandable. If they're in disguise, you would think they're like a doppelganger of that person. But somehow Paris recognizes her by the breasts and I think by the ankles. And there's a part when the two Ajaxes recognize somebody, one of the gods, probably Athena, by the backs of his legs or something, of the guy she's impersonating. And then so I had Helen recognize Aphrodite by the breasts and by the backs of her legs. And then I thought to myself, well, how does she see both of those things from the same angle? And I had it that she had first been following and then overtook her to look backwards. So that was like my explanation in the middle of the story of how she saw both of those things. Again, it's kind of fun to have to like think on your feet and come up with an excuse for some misspoken line that you said. Again, I feel like I'm learning a lot about how Homer composed stories, even though, again, it's very early in this process and I am certainly not any good at it yet, but it's just a fun thing to be doing. All right, I'm excited to keep going with it. I don't know what I'm going to do once we get to the battles. I definitely am not going to remember the specific names of people being killed, the sort of like, random people that come up and it tells their life story and then they get their, jaw sliced off or whatever. I'm not going to remember who gets killed, when they get killed, what their backstory is, but I'm looking forward to seeing what I come up with for that stuff. Yeah, again, not that good at it yet, but just doing it every day is the important part. All right.